The Imperfect podcast. We have been talking all about relationships for quite a while. Welcome to episode, I think, 12, 13. Episode 13, lucky 13. You can't live on the 13th floor of a building usually, but you can be at the 13th episode of our podcast. We're going to talk today all about appreciation. Are you appreciated, and how would you know? I can't wait to get started. Okay, so if you guys are keeping track, we already talked about safety. We talked about how important it is for your relationship. If you want your relationship to be healthy and engaged, you're going to have to make a safe, secure place for you to share love. We talked last week about trust, right? How important. I mean, trust is the very foundation of building a relationship, and breaking trust can break your relationship in the past and in the future. It's one of the few things that when you break it, it doesn't just break right now, it breaks all the way back and all the way forward in time. But today, we're going to talk about something completely different. We're going to shift gears, and I'll let Coach Witt break it to you.
So today we're talking about appreciation inside of your couple. I can't tell you how many conversations that I've had with friends, with women that I hang out with, that they just don't feel appreciated inside of their marriages. And you know, it's like I bend over backwards for my husband and I just don't really feel appreciated. It's like, you know, he forgets all of the things that I do for him. And I think it's just essential to see, you know, and appreciate all the little small things that our spouse, our significant other does for us day in and day out without, you know, I think there's a lot of expectations that happen that we're like, well, they're just supposed to do this.
Yeah, so I think today there's so much to talk about. When we talk about appreciation, we could talk for 8 hours about this topic and not cover it. But I think there's some key reasons that people don't appreciate. They don't show appreciation, right? And what you hit on one of them, Whitney, which is, well, that's what they're supposed to do, right? Like that's what they're supposed. Like let me give you an example from coaching men. Is like, well, she only sleeps with me 2 times a week. And I'm like, well, dude, appreciate that. Like a lot of people don't have that. Like what happens when your spouse dies, or if you're in a sexless marriage. Yeah, well, that's what you're supposed to do. Like that's someone's supposed to do. Like, yes, of course, sex is a healthy part of a relationship. And or maybe you have an agreement that you do the dishes and she cleans the bed or makes the bed every day, right? And so every day these are your roles. These are the roles you've agreed on. So that's what you're supposed. It doesn't mean you can't be appreciative for that. It doesn't mean that you can't still be happy about that. I think people get hung up in, well, they're already supposed to. Another thing, and I'll come to you on this, but like another thing that I see is when people feel like, well, they're doing it for themselves. They're not really doing it for me. They're doing it for themselves. So I'm not going to say, even though I benefit, I'm not going to say thank you. I'm not going to show any appreciation there.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, okay, well, she cooked dinner, but she's really cooking dinner because she needs to eat dinner, or there's so many things like that. Well, he was already doing that for himself, so why should I thank him for that? But I think a tactic with that is to say, hey, thank you for doing that for us, because we benefit a lot of the times from things that our partner does, even though they were going to do it for themselves, just by saying, hey, thank you for doing it for us, even though he or she was going to do it for themselves anyway.
Right. I think another thing that has people kind of withhold appreciation. A lot of times people are bitter because they don't feel appreciated. So their response is to not appreciate in return. Well, you didn't say thanks to me when I picked up the kids. So now I'm not going to say thanks. They play this weird tit for tat game. I mean, I would love to say we never played this game, but I think as recently as this morning, we might have played this game. But what happens is it creates this like corrosive cycle down, right? It creates this, well, now I'm not. So then the other person feels jilted. It's crazy. I want to talk to you about, there is a difference. Like are you feeling unappreciated? Okay. Are you feeling unappreciated in your marriage? That does not mean that you are unappreciated. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean you're not unappreciated, but the feeling, I want to really talk about this because a lot of times in relationships, our problems are we start reading feelings as facts, right? A feeling, it's a fact that you're feeling a feeling, right? So if I'm if I feel underappreciated. It's a fact that I feel that way. That does not mean that it's a fact that Whitney doesn't appreciate me. My feeling about a thing is like one thread in the fabric. Like if this shirt was the fabric of our relationship, my feeling about it would be one or two threads. That's it. There's a whole lot of other information. So when you're feeling underappreciated, I think the first thing to check yourself is, okay, I'm feeling underappreciated. That doesn't mean I am underappreciated. I think I'm probably like the king of this, but
Well, I think it's the self check, and I think it's okay to have that conversation. And when I say it's okay, I quickly will get defensive. So, like, Kevin may say, "Hey, I don't feel like I'm being appreciated in this particular area," and I don't receive feedback very well at all. And that's something I'm working on personally with myself. But is also me teaching Kevin, how to give me feedback so that it's not coming off as abrasive. Because I think sometimes, like, instantly, I think it seems abrasive, so then I shut down, and then again we get in that tit for tat of, oh well, he doesn't appreciate all of the 1 million things I do for him, so why am I even doing them?
right. And but I want to stay on this too because a lot of times couples are having an appreciate like feeling underappreciated, and it boils down to love languages. Like this happened to us for a long time. My primary love language is words of affirmation. And then my secondary love language, if you haven't read the book Love Languages, it is a little churchy for me, but I absolutely recommend it. I've never seen a better framework for understanding how people show and receive love. So my primary love language is words of affirmation. And then my secondary is physical touch. So Whitney's primary is acts of service. And then, luckily her secondary for a long time was physical touch. Well, here's the thing. My last love language of the five was acts of service. Her number one is acts of service, right? And words of affirmation was much lower on her list. So what was happening for us for a long time, and I used to get so hurt about this, I would write Whitney notes every day, these words of affirmation, hey, I love you, whatever, and she wouldn't write it back. And I used to think that she did nothing. I'm like, what the hell is going on? I am appreciating you so much every day. I know for a fact like the way that I live, every single day I'm writing you a note of appreciation, and you are never reciprocating that, right? But in fact, she was doing something, right? I just wasn't hearing it.
Well, yeah, but I was loving you how I wanted to be loved, and man, that's constant work. It's constant work for me to remind myself that, hey, this is how I want to be loved. These, when Kevin takes out the trash, or he makes me coffee, or he does the acts of service. That, I mean, yes, my cup is like overflowing. So I, in turn, double down and do things for him, but then have to constantly remind myself that that's not how he wants to be loved. I know that he appreciates those things because I often hear thank you, or this dinner was great, or, insert whatever I've done, but it doesn't add up. It doesn't feel him like the words of affirmation. So I have got, I am oftentimes reminding myself that, hey, the notes are important. The words here and there, the stopping and giving the hug is so important, other than all of the things that I'm doing.
So here's what happened in return is like at the same time that I'm writing Whitney notes, we have a famous story where I confronted her angrily and hurt, saying, I don't think you appreciate me. I don't think you love me. You haven't written me notes or anything. This used to be a big part of our relationship when we were dating, and now you don't do it anymore. And again, Whit, not the best person at taking feedback. So that sparked a big fight. And then she just stomped off. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, what is going on? Why is she stomping off? And then she stomped back and basically she didn't throw, but all but threw a gift at me, which was a book she had written for me.
It was a book that I had been like, I don't even remember, it's a book that I picked up that it was like a daily something, like, what do you love most about your spouse? Like, how does he make you laugh? And it was like, I had been filling this book out like daily, and it wasn't just like a one word. It was like, like a paragraph or so. So I was like, inside of me, I was like, oh my gosh, I have been giving you all of these words of appreciation, but he didn't know that that was actually happening. So there were all of these hurt feelings. And then, of course, with the way I received feedback, I just doubled down with, okay, here's your words of affirmation.
Here's your fucking book, and then goodbye. I just stuff it down your throat. And you
I
get choked up.
probably was even thinking in the moment, you'll never get another note, but that's not true.
Well, but I think it's important though, because I think that's a microcosm. That experience is a microcosm of what happens because you're filling out this book. It was cool. It was a really cool, like, I think it was like Why I Love You or something. It was a nice, like 60, 70 page. I mean, it was a lot. It took a while to read it, and it really filled me up. But you knew you were having this surprise. You knew you were working on this every day. So for, let's say you did it for a month. I don't know what the real time period was, but during that month, I didn't get anything. I didn't actually see or receive anything. So I'm feeling underappreciated. You're doing this amazing thing. I think this happens. So here's how I see us guys mess this up all the time is they buy surprise trips for their wives. Now, I can't make a blanket statement for everyone, but I will say that is usually a horrible idea on about 100 different levels because I figured something out. I used to surprise Whitney with these things like, oh, we're going to go to Hawaii. When do we leave? In an hour, right? First off, I've just stressed her out because she's not packed, she thinks. And if I packed for her, it's certainly not right, right? But I realized also that if I gave her the gift 6 months ahead of time, she could enjoy it for 6 months. And for 6 months, she felt appreciated. By keeping it a secret, she didn't get to plan for it. She didn't get to pick out swimsuits. She didn't like. I actually lessened the appreciation. So yeah, cool. She had a good past tense story. But hey, if you're going to take your spouse out on a trip, man, tell them about it early. Let them get jacked up about it and excited.
I think you even tested out, like, yes, the anticipation of having something like that is amazing. And then if you bring it down to the small things, like, because we think of, okay, a trip to Hawaii, yeah, that's not in the budget anytime soon. So, like, let's bring it back to the little things. Kevin, you have tested this out with me, I know, 102 times. I don't even know that you're doing it until after the fact, but you have, like, okay, I'm going to bring out the trash and see if she notices. And you have said, you literally tell me thank you every time I bring out the trash. And I know that you said, and I don't think that she's even going to notice that I've done it.
I would do the dishes. So for a while, because I got really into this love language thing, I got a little distracted from that, but I got really into this, like, so let me teach you something very important. Okay. So if you are listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, and you have a journal, take out your notepad and get ready. Ready? Je peux parler en français toute la journée. Moi, je parle français. Toi, tu parles pas français. Alors, tu vas entendre, tu vas comprendre rien. Okay, you got that? Right? You got that? Did you get? Now, if you spoke French, you heard me say something, and I'll just leave that to those of you who speak French. Comment below. We'll see how close you were or I were. Who knows? I might have messed that up. If you don't speak French, though, I'm guessing you got very little out of that. Why? Because I communicated in a way that you could not understand, and there was no possibility of you understanding. So if my wife's primary love language is acts of service, and her bottom love language is words of affirmation, and I'm giving her a note every single day, I'm not really speaking her love language. I'm not really hitting her in a way that she can feel it with, like I'm sending love, but it's not getting there. It's me speaking French to someone who doesn't speak French. It's confusing. So for a while, was like, okay, I'll write a note because I like to do that. That's who I am. We write each other notes every day. Truth. We have 210 pounds of notes in this closet right here. No, true story. Search our socials, you see pictures of it. It's crazy because we've developed this habit, right? But I was like, hey, I'm going to do an act of service also. So one of the things I do is I make coffee every morning. And then I would like do the dishes, or I would take whatever little thing I could see. And it's funny because my lowest love language is acts of service. So even as I did it, I was like, this is ridiculous. She's never going to notice. Like, she will never notice that I did this. I do the dishes, and man, 100% chance that afternoon, man, thank you for doing this. It's so great that you did this. I'd clean up the closet or make the bed. And it was like this huge thing. But why? Because I was speaking a language she could understand. right? And same thing for me with words of affirmation, physical touch. Now, that was where we crossed. Physical touch, I think, is what really kept us in touch as we got decalibrated on this. We both really like physical touch, so that helped. But I mean, it every time, even today, when I do an act of service for Whitney, I'm like, this doesn't even matter. Why am I doing this? But why? Because that's not my love language. That's not how I receive it. So in order to help your spouse feel appreciated, or in order to be appreciated, the problem may not be that your spouse isn't doing it. They just may be speaking Chinese and you don't speak Chinese, and you just have to figure that out.
And don't not do it because you're angry. That has been like, that is a promise I think that I've made to myself, is that I'm still going to do the things for Kevin that I want to do to show appreciation to him, to love him the way he wants to be loved, even when we're colliding, even when we're angry with one another. The note is still going to be there. That it may just simply
the note may say, this is a true story. The note may say, you're not getting a note because you're an asshole. Love you, Whit. I've gotten that note, or variations of that. But that's huge. That's huge.
And you know, and even as early as this morning, Kevin was angry, and he still made the bed. And without me asking, he was in there making the bed. So it's important because it eases some of the anger. For me, it was like, okay, he's still doing this. He still loves me. He still appreciates our marriage. He's still making a deposit into us to build us, because we will have that conflict. And I think it's so important to not get caught up in the, well, man, I'm really pissed off at him, so I'm not going to do the things I normally do for him.
Well, and I think if you're someone who feels like you're going above and beyond to show appreciation, but you don't think it's getting through, or your partner is constantly saying, I don't feel appreciated, you may have a love language mismatch. You may be showing appreciation in a way that they can't receive it, right? Like that's a big deal. You can put, if you have a goldfish, you can put a hot dog in the tank every day, and about a week, that goldfish is going to starve to death. And you can say, well, I put tons of food in the tank. Like, what's wrong with this goldfish? Why would it starve, right? But you didn't put fish food. You just threw hot dogs in there, right? Which is barely people food. Let's be real. So I think there's a lot of relationships. There are a lot of people doing that. A lot of people are throwing hot dogs in the fish tank and then don't understand why their spouse is starving. And the reason that that's happening is you're not delivering that appreciation in a way that they want to receive it, or a way that they naturally do receive it, for whatever reason. The why of why that's their preference is irrelevant. You're in a committed relationship with this person, and if you're committed to showing appreciation, which is a key component, it is a key component of a happy, healthy marriage / long-term relationship. If you're committed to doing that, then give it to them in a way they can receive it, or you're kind of dumb for giving hot dogs to fish and thinking that's going to do the trick.
I want to circle back to saying thank you for the things that they're doing for you, the things that you are taking notice of. There's a few things that Kevin does, and they are just specifically for me. He wakes up and makes me coffee every morning, and it's rare if he drinks any. I have fresh flowers on my counter always. And he doesn't buy flowers every day. I don't want you to hear me saying that, but I always have fresh flowers because he knows how important that is to me, and he does that for me. And I think often we can get lost in the appreciation of that, because it becomes this like constant thing. It's like, oh, well, he's done this for the past 14 or 15 years. So it's just, I've come to expect it. And I think, there's sometimes, like, I know you've left town and like for a week or so for work, and I'm making my own coffee, and I'm like, man, this doesn't taste the same, because there's a little bit of love that goes into that same coffee that I make, that you make. It's so much better.
I will tell you that's one of the points of pride for me, like the flowers on the table, coffee every day. Coffee is not flowers. I have a 13-year record, no misses. Coffee every day. I mean, there are days I just sleep in. There are also days where she says, hey, you got to get up because I need coffee.
I have done that. I'm like, hey, I'm about to wake up. You need to get up. Go. He's like, oh, I see how it is.
But I will say, though, that that showing that appreciation in that way means a lot to me because it keeps a continuity. It keeps like, hey, I want to be missed when I die. Like, I want you to think about this. If you were to die tomorrow, obviously your spouse would be sad. Okay, I mean, well, I assume let's assume you weren't killed by an ungrateful or unappreciated spouse. But you're beyond that, though. Would their life really be different? How would their life be different? Right. And this is for me, I keep thinking of this as like, hey, when I go, the flowers go. When I go, the coffee goes. And that'll be a constant reminder of how much I loved her. I don't want it to hold her back, or I mean, I'll be happy she shed some tears from time to time. But I want that to be like, even after I'm dead, because I did this, because I was able to create this as such a constant state for so long, that when I go, that goes. And that will actually be a reminder, even beyond the grave, of how much I loved and appreciated this person. That's pretty damn cool. But that requires me being consistent right now. So think about that. Like your spouse, your wife, your husband, your partner, if you died, what would really be different about their life? And if you can't think of a lot of things, like start creating those, because if the answer is nothing, then you don't have much of a relationship.
Or maybe you just haven't even thought about it, and hey, that's your assignment for today. Like go and maybe journal, hey, here are the things that I do specifically for my person, and like detail them and like look at them and say, okay, is that really, am I doing it for them, or am I doing it for me because of them? Like just really like dive into this, and it doesn't have to be a lot. Remember, it doesn't have to be the trip to Hawaii. It could be something as small as, no, I make the coffee every day so that, he doesn't have to get up and do it, or I give him that first good morning hug or good morning kiss or whatever. It, like, really look into that and bring that up in conversation when you're on date night, or bring it up in a love note to your person and say, hey, I really love kissing you first thing in the morning, or thank you for making me that coffee every day, or thank you for always making sure that I have fresh flowers. And I'm hoping that somehow, Kevin, you can figure out how to create that beyond the grave.
I just say, just keep me alive. That's the plan. Yeah. Listen, guys, as you leave this podcast, as we wrap this up, show appreciation every single day. Focus on showing, right? You can't control, receiving, but focus on showing, and focus on showing it in a way that your partner appreciates it on their terms. And hopefully that will be reciprocated. And keep in mind that if you're feeling unappreciated, that does not mean you're unappreciated. Right? You may be very well appreciated and you have a partner who can't, doesn't know how, or is showing it. More than likely, I have never met a man, who wants to still be married. Now, that's a key thing. I've met many wives who feel very unappreciated, and I've coached many of their husbands. I have never met one who wants to stay married who isn't already doing a whole lot of things to show appreciation. They're just usually doing it stupidly, or in a way that could never be seen, or in a way that could never be felt. So, like, if you give your partner the benefit of the doubt, right? Trust that is the person that you love. They do love you also, right? And you're in a safe space. Then allow that appreciation, and then kind of inform one another. It's not easy, but hey, here's how I'd like to be appreciated. When you do that, it doesn't really do anything for me. A big moment, and we'll wrap this up, but I just want to get this in. For us, was Whitney telling me how she made dinner for us every night, because that showed how much she loved us. But what was happening is she was spending so much time cooking, we could never play games or never spend time. I said, hey, I love that. I don't want to take that away, but can we just have one night a week where maybe we have sandwiches or something, so we can just spend some of the quality time that the kids like, right? And that was so changing for us. So she let go of that and showed appreciation with games instead. And it's been an awesome piece of our family just from that.
It's the willingness to teach each other and the willingness to receive the feedback.
All right, guys. So if this was just a podcast full of great insights and thoughts, you've wasted it. Go put this into action in your life. Go actually take some action. Show some right now. Text someone appreciation. Send a voice memo. Send a video. Send a text. Show some appreciation so that this isn't just another good idea, but something you can actually use to change your relationship for the better. Thank you for being here at the Powerfully Imperfect podcast. If you know someone who could benefit from this, please share it. Please like it, do whatever you want. If you're ready to have some coaching, not counseling, which is, hey, let's get some tools and let's go somewhere together, we're here. Reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you.